Well, good afternoon, morning, evening, middle of the night, wherever you are, to all of our listeners. And welcome back to Macabre and Company, episode two. Erica, this is groundbreaking. We're on episode two already.
Episode two. I can't believe it. I'm so excited.
So excited. My name is George, and this is the beautiful
Erica.
on this side if you're watching. Our Trans-Pacific podcast has reached our second episode. We hope you enjoyed our first one. We learned a lot. I'm sure that you learned a lot. Again, we're still new to this, but we're super excited to be entertaining you all with our stories from the darkness.
Yes. Oh my
If you,
gosh, I just love staring at your face. I could watch you talk all day.
no way, I could
Yeah.
watch you talk.
Stop it. I love it.
So, as always, we like to start our episodes with a little drawing from the tarot deck. And I'm actually going to use a different tarot deck last week. Last week, I used my queer tarot deck, which was super fun. But this is actually a deck that was gifted to me by my mom, of all people,
Oh my
which
gosh,
is kind
Queen
of
Liz.
Queen Liz, which is kind of cool because she's from Yorkshire. We're going to be talking about Yorkshire today. And this deck was actually, we found it in this shop. There's a shop that I think I may have taken you in called Crystal Fantasy in Palm Springs. It's got all tarot decks, all different types of crystals, incense, and then in the middle of the room they have like tarot readers, spiritualists, psychics, mediums throughout the week, and you can go and meet with them. And I went in and I was looking for a new deck, and this one just drew itself to me. It's all about crows. I'll show you the back of the cards. So the design is all crow feathers here for those
I
watching.
love crow
And then
feathers.
each card is designed, and the arcanas are designed by different pictures of crows. And I like to draw one at the beginning of every episode. And this one is actually the judgment card that I picked today. I'm new to tarot, so I'm still learning. So let's read a little bit about the judgment card for those watching.
Okay.
It is a large crow, and it looks to be overlooking a bunch of little crows over maybe a lake or a pond. And do you know what's even funnier? Look at the cross. That's the St. George cross.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Look at that crow. Wow. How exciting.
So the
Those are
crow
beautiful
calls,
cards.
these are beautiful. Yeah, they're gorgeous. The crow calls out for those who are ready to rise up and face their past by accepting the judgment. We're talking about the past today, a little bit of history for us. Only by acknowledging the history will you be able to move forward into the future. Now is an excellent time to meditate and listen to your inner voice. It is only through quiet contemplation that you find a path to absolution. The judgment card may reflect a recent awakening that has moved you to take stock of any habits or life choices that are holding you back. When judgment is reversed, it may suggest that you're not the one in control of your decisions or that you have given up power. It may also point you to a time of being overly judgmental, and as a result, you are missing an opportunity. Now, I just literally got chills. Can you see that? I got chills
Yeah.
down my
Woo.
in the story that we're going to talk about today. Clarke Hall in Yorkshire, is a story about judgment, really, and about how I think past judgments on people have almost been transcended as we've moved on from those judgments. So we're going to talk a little bit about witches today. So
Oh my
Clarke
gosh.
Hall, what drew me to this story when I was a kid, I went to a really small school in this little village called Whalley in Yorkshire. And we used to go on field trips every so often. But where we're from, a lot of the field trips involve history. It's a very old country, very old medieval little villages and towns, and these beautiful stately homes. Clarke Hall is um, a smaller home. I'll get into the history when I get my notes out because I can't memorize all that. But we actually went there, and this is so weird that our school took us there. We're like kids, maybe like between 5 and 11 years old, right? Primary school, really young. And they took us to this house where there'd been a lot of darkness surrounding the stories in this house and the people that lived there, particularly around the witch trials when it reached England, right? And stories of witches and people were believing that witches were around and the evil and the darkness that surrounded the Wiccan and the pagan culture in particular and the pagan religion. And this hall was actually a space where witches in a particular coven who weren't necessarily witches, from what we know, what we've grown to believe, because they were trying not to be known as witches, right? Because they were then put to death if they were. They would hide in this particular place that we're going to be talking about. So Yeah. Did you look into it at all? Did you find out anything about it?
Something super haunted happened to me while I was trying to do research, George. So I
No.
have, like, since you proposed this topic, have been trying to find. I cannot find it. I cannot find the name that you mentioned. I can only find like an artist by that name that's from Melbourne that passed away in 2016. Um,
Right.
and after trying to research again last night, I was like, maybe there's just like I just like sat down, was like finding. When I woke up this morning, my computer like was not working. Everything was plugged in. It was just like spinning. And so I don't know like what spirit is trying to stop me from finding out about Clarke Hall, but I like could not. It would pull up nothing every time I tried to search for it.
Margaret Harris.
Yeah. Margaret
So
doesn't want
I
me to know.
really believe in obviously spiritualism. There's a lot of where I'm from in Yorkshire, in West Yorkshire, there's a lot of pagan communities. There's lots of Wiccan communities. There's particularly a little town which I would love to take you to one day, called Hebden Bridge, which is um, so untouched. Like the nature and the rivers and the trees and the forests are so untouched, but the villages and the houses and the public spaces have been kind of built into the side of this hill, into this ravine, and it's so beautiful there, right? And people kind of congregate there. Actually, Fern Gully, remember the movie Fern Gully, is based on the forest around that area.
Love Ferngully so much. I love my sister and I will still sing Batty's rap like to this day. My name is Batty. My logic is erratic. Yeah, like I love it. I
Yeah, I
love
remember
Ferngully.
growing up and like my grandparents and even my mom, like, and our teachers telling us stories of it. And when you're a kid, you're like, all right, they're just telling us stories of fairies and stuff like this, because it's fun. But then you grow up, and then now we have the internet in front of us, so you can look into it and you can go back to all these different like books and um transcripts and all this stuff from way back when. And there's so much evidence and actual tales that people have told and witnessed sightings and of all these magical spiritual things that happen there. So it's really magical. So let's talk a little bit about Clarke Hall. And for those watching, I'm sorry if I glanced down at my notes, but I've got quite a lot of notes here. So Clarke Hall is in Halifax in England, and it's said to be the site of a haunting involving a witch, which we love, right? Like,
Ooh, we love a witch.
so in the early 17th century, Clarke Hall was owned by the Clarke family. Built by them, owned by them, passed down throughout their families throughout the generations. And during the 17th century, witch trials and accusations were rampant across England. Like it was a almost a way of outing people that have wronged you as well, right? So obviously, I believe there was some truth to it, like believe what you will, and truth to certain religions and to aspects of the magical and macabre kind of culture. But back then, a lot of people use it for wrong, right? They would accuse someone of being a witch
Yeah,
when they
you're just
really knew that was a really easy way to prosecute someone.
yeah, you were just like mad because somebody has more chickens than you, or like was a woman. You were just like being a woman, like making a potion. And honestly, like the amount of potions that I put on my face every day still, like I would have absolutely been called a witch.
You would have been totally called a witch. I would have probably been called like your witch's assistant.
Oh my gosh, yeah, we would have been in hiding for sure.
For sure. But I think we would have had fun though in hiding together.
Oh, we'd have so much fun. We probably would have
So
been hiding with Margaret.
tied up with Margaret. So it's said that a woman named Margaret Harrison, who we learned about in school, lived near Clarke Hall and was accused of witchcraft by her neighbors. The reason for their accusations are unclear, but speculation surrounds it, as in trade, but also in sex work back then, right? Which was kind of frowned upon by the elite of the towns, but it was a necessary, as it is now in some places, it is a necessary and valid work, right? And an occupation. But such accusations were often driven by personal vendettas too, and fear, and just people not liking each other, right? And it's kind of really, really sad. But it's said that in certain writings, that she wasn't a witch. Some stories say that she was a little bit, or that she surrounded herself around people that were witches as well, and she was trying to learn that because she wanted to feel protected because she wasn't necessarily in a safe space. And it's funny to think that a town that has actually progressed so much, I would say in the past 10 years that I've really full-time lived away from there. I've seen a lot of difference in it. I can't imagine how different our life and our world is now compared to what it was back then. Can you imagine? So Margaret was arrested one day and she was brought to trial in the town where she faced brutal interrogations and was ultimately convicted of witchcraft. They were like, "You're a witch, bitch."
And
Boom.
like it was so, it always blows my mind the things that they did where they were like, if we were going to throw you into a river and if you sink and die, then you were not a witch. But if you
That's
float, you must be a witch. You're like, well, either way, you're dead.
they would torture them. They would do certain things to these women, and it was probably some like old white man doing it, right? That was just like probably getting a kick out of it, to be honest, right? But they would do that and then we would continue to be like, okay, that's not, but we have another test. So now we're going to pull out your fingernails. And if it's painful, then you're not a witch. Oh, it's painful? Well, now we're going to try drown you. And if you survive, then you weren't a witch. Oh, you were a witch, right? But if you
Yeah.
die, then you know you weren't a
Oh
witch.
gosh, sorry about it. You weren't a witch. Yeah. How
No, you're
absolutely ridiculous.
So she was sentenced to death, though, right? So they were like, they did all this stuff to her, they kept her. But in the house itself, right? So this is where like the crazy school stories come in. I remember going there, and our school made us dress up as Victorian children for this field trip. Like there was
Stop it.
preparation for this preparation.
Do
Like
you have
so,
pictures? Do you have pictures of this?
I could find pictures. My mom will have photos too. I have a photograph of us on a Victorian day. So
Oh
my
my gosh.
school was so old that we had once a year we had like a centennial like celebration, right? We would celebrate the anniversary of the school being built, and it was on like really ancient grounds, and we would dress up as Victorians. But for this field trip they made us dress up like but we got on a bus, right? But then we were all in these, and I remember having like a waistcoat on, like really, this is me at like 5 years old, but I remember having a really ill-fitting outfit on. I was probably a little bit older, maybe I was around 8 or 9. And I remember being really mortified by this outfit because it was like gross, and my mom had like stained it with tea to make it look like dirty because she wanted me to look like peasant kids. The tea, they were like, you want to be like poor and like from like Victorian times, so
We
yeah,
love a group dress up. Honestly, that's iconic.
you like think of like immersive experiences. These were like the OG immersive experiences. Like now you can go to like Area 50 or whatever it is in Vegas and like have this full-on alien fun experience and take mushrooms and stuff. Back then it was like, no, we're just gonna put you in really terrible garb and we're gonna make you go. And then so for
I
lunch,
think it's
all
Area 51, just FYI.
no, that's the actual place. But there's that
Oh,
no, there's a museum kind of like immersive
yeah.
experience. It's like Area 50 or something. I don't think they
Okay.
can call it 51. Maybe it
Well,
is
we
Area.
need to go. Maybe we should go on a field trip.
Yeah, we're going to Vegas.
Yeah, let's do
We've
it.
never been to Vegas together. We've never done Vegas together, huh?
No, it's about time.
Oh my God. Our husbands cannot come with us. We would
No,
drive.
absolutely not. They're not allowed.
So anyway, we would go. I remember sitting down for lunch and we sat down in this hall and they fed us like bread and broth. And I remember being like super hungry and being really upset because I was like, I just wanted like pizza or like chips or something, right? Or a sandwich or dessert. But we were like eating this like food that they would have had back then. Anyway, great. They were trying to educate us, whatever. But I remember going upstairs and they were showing us the bedrooms, and throughout the house, there was these like cubbies that they would open, and they're like crawl spaces where what the Clarke family really looked out for the women in their village is where the story's going. So the Clarke family knew that these were going on. They were very progressive. They knew or they believed there was no such thing as witchcraft. They just knew that these men in the town and the people that were running the country really were just persecuting women and trying to do population control, yada, yada, yada. And this is what they were doing, right? So the women would go around to Clark Hall and they would hide in there, right? So they would hide in these cubby spaces and they would go and be safe. That was their safe space. But anyway,
Oh my
she
gosh,
was
that's amazing.
yeah, super cool, right? So the Clark family, woo. Margaret was caught, and she was convicted of witchcraft, and she was sentenced to death, and she was hanged, which was the most common method of dealing with witches at the time in England, right? So they actually hanged her on a tree, which they pointed out to us. 8 years old, less than 10 years
8 years
old.
old. Oh my gosh. Oh my, I can just see your
Oh
tiny little face.
my God. I do. I have some really pretty pictures, actually. I do have pictures of us in these outfits. I have them. I'll send them to you to put on wherever. So they, she was hung on this tree. Terrible. Now, following her execution, strange things started to plague Clarke Hall. The Clarke family and their servants reported hearing unexplained noises such as footsteps, whispers, especially at night. Objects would move on their own and cold spots would appear in various rooms. Some claimed to see ghostly figures of a woman wandering the halls. Very Doris. Believed to
She
be the
keeps
spirit
giving
of
like Doris's cousin.
yeah, they're like totally like, we're gonna haunt these places, girl. Let's do it together. Believed to be the spirit of Margaret Harrison seeking revenge or justice for her wrongful death. Now, in 2014, so Clarke Hall was kept as a museum for many, many years. School trips, people would go there, people interested in the paranormal, people just interested in history. It's a very beautiful building. I have photographs that I've downloaded as well. I'll send those, we'll put those up as well. Of Clarke Hall, gorgeous, right? Like just really historical, but you definitely get chills, right? I mean, it's one of those places in the UK where it's a gorgeous house, but there's gravestones in the garden. There's like overgrown bushes that look like they would just envelop you like freaking, Audrey 2 from Little Shop of Horrors or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's a beautiful, beautiful place, but pretty, pretty spooky. But in 2014, it was sold. The company, which I think is like the Yorkshire Heritage something, they couldn't afford to keep it open, so it was sold to a private buyer who bought it and has renovated but tried to keep it looking as it was, but is now living there. And again, things happen there a lot. So there's no real concrete evidence of, hauntings there, obviously, especially back then when things weren't documented. But since then, and since 2014, people have said that things happen there all the time. Things falling off the wall, people getting there and knowing there's a presence, walking in, getting chills. I don't want to be in here. And the biggest one is apparently the fire lights on its own.
Stop it. That's
Yeah,
so hazardous. Margaret, girl.
yes, exactly. But it's not a gas fire or anything. It's just an old stone fireplace, which they would fill with wood from the garden and they would light it. And apparently, numerous occasions since the house was bought and families have moved into it, the fireplace lights on its own in the dining room and in the living room and in a couple of the bedrooms too.
Oh my gosh, I'm getting chills.
Now, the footsteps thing's big, right? I remember walking around there and I really remember creaky noises. Like I remember creaky floor steps. I remember the doors being really creaky. Obviously, it was full of kids. I remember us all running around there, but I do remember getting a really uncertain feeling of like spooktacularness right there. Like it was very spooky, very chilling. So I was reading into this, read more into it, learned more stories about Clarke Hall, etc., to find out, and we'll go further into this later down because I want to find out more about the witchcraft of Yorkshire as well. But there is a lot of witchcraft where I am from. A lot of people that are descendants of witches in the US too, that came over from the UK, came to the US, and that's where the Salem stuff all, which we should do we should do an episode on Salem too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, we've got to do Salem at some point.
Just Salem. We have
Let's
to
go
do
to
that.
Salem. We need to go
Salem.
on so many field trips.
And then apparently deep diving into again Reddit, witches fled the US. So the Salem witch trials and all that area, a lot of witches boarded boats and came back to the UK to find their families that they'd once left over there, descendants of, and moved back. And I guess Yorkshire was a place, and the north of England, where it was less built up at the time, was a place where a lot of witches would convene there for a safety. But then again, eventually it took over and these people were, prosecuted and I truly believe that really witchcraft didn't really end and witches didn't just disappear and people stopped believing. I think they were just kind of like suppressed and the stories were just kind of like brushed under the rugs. I think there's a lot of truth to
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. And I think as well, like the closer we get to the Industrial Revolution, like the more people kind of stop believing or stop needing people to be witches. They're like, we invented things, we learned more, and we're like, man, never mind, who cares about that? I think the closer we get to modern times, the less people need to believe in witchcraft. You can just be like, no, I just don't like that guy. Like,
Yeah. Because technology took over too. And I think like you look at your iPhone and you're like, that's freaking magic, right? I know it's not. But back like I mean, if we were to go back there and be like, look at this, right? People would like freak out, which
absolutely is magic. I don't know how they build an iPhone. I think that's magic for me.
I I remember, do you remember a guy we worked with on ships? I worked with him when we were doing Hasbro the game show. He worked for Carnival Entertainment. He was called Tibby. Did you ever meet Tibby?
Yes, I do remember Tibby.
Yeah, I remember sitting down with Tibby in rehearsals. It was when we were the Breeze. So we're in Monfalcone in Italy, and we were sat on the Breeze in the theater. And he was just getting this, he was just getting everything to do stuff, right? Like the screens. And he's like, oh, boop, boop, boop. And then something magic would happen on the stage. And I'm like, I just don't understand how someone once upon a time made one piece of metal talk to another piece of metal.
It's wild. It's really
That's
incredible.
what it
Like,
is.
and it's hard to
Like
explain science for to everybody. So it's so much easier to just witchcraft.
witchcraft. It's all witchcraft. Totally.
Yeah.
Is there any like history of witchcraft in Canada? Like, is there a big like
Do you
witchcraft thing
know,
there?
I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
Where I'm from on the West Coast is very like hippie and nature, and absolutely there's witches there that are like getting back to nature and doing, spells in the trees. I will do some
Yeah.
extra investigation and get back to you.
Canada's an old country, huh?
Not as old as England, but
Not as old, but it's still an old country. It's older than the US, right? And like America.
mm, I no, we're pretty similar ages. Colonies, we're colonies.
Oh yeah, I
I'll do
guess.
some fact checking.
I sound like a complete
Cut
idiot.
it out, cut it out.
Cut the white person talking about countries that he doesn't belong in.
That
Terrible.
Captain Colonialism. Stop it.
Anyway, so staying in Halifax and talking about the witch trials. So that progressed. We move away. Margaret Harrison, all of her witchy covens and her hauntings carried on, and obviously that's all going. But another fun fact about Halifax, where I'm from, is Halifax is one of the last places to use the guillotine. Yes, in the entire world. So there's actually this thing called the gibbet. Now, the gibbet, if you look at the Peace Hall in Halifax, the Peace Hall is now a concert hall essentially that has retail space, restaurants, bars in it. It's beautiful. It's like gorgeous. It's this huge building, like it's a huge square with a huge what do you call it? Like St. Peter's Square. Is it St. Peter's Square? I'm talking about like a huge open space, right? It's
Yeah.
got a big thing around it with retail space, restaurants, bars in it. In the middle, they've turned it into a concert space. They do markets there, a lot of fun stuff.
Sounds so
Pride,
cute.
yeah, it's beautiful, beautiful. They had like an industrial museum in there at one point when we were kids that we visited, but that was a place where they used to do public beheadings.
Oh my gosh,
And
that's incredible.
the street that used to lead from the north, actually where the house that I grew up in, from that area of our town, the street or the road now that leads all the way down to the town is called Gibbet Street. Because at the bottom of it was the Peace Hall at the very, very bottom, and the gibbet was the what they called the guillotine, right? The name for
Isn't
that
that what
guillotine.
they call the little dongles that go into Crocs? Aren't those gibbets?
Maybe. I know that winnets are like the little balls of poop that hang on your dog's butt.
What are
Yeah, winnets.
they? Oh my gosh. Words are funny.
Words are funny. Anyway, so the gibbet, right? So the gibbet, they used to chop people's heads off publicly right there. And then when the peace all became more of a less of a public execution place and the world moved on, they still were doing it, but they were doing the beheadings further up, like so like mid Gibbet Street there. And so there's still this is how like messed up my town is. There's still a replica of the guillotine in Halifax that they keep up, and I swear to God, that is just the man reminding us you don't want to go back to that, behave yourselves. But it's still there. They have
That's
like a record,
wild.
and the stone mount that it was on is the original one. So like if you go and see that, like that is the pile of rocks that like hundreds and hundreds of heads have like rolled down on.
Oh my
So at the
gosh.
opposite end of town, there is a pub called the Running Man. I never knew this, but the Running Man is actually a marker. So this pub wasn't originally called the Running Man. I have to look up the original name, I'm not sure, but I think it was just marker in the town. And what they used to say to people, if you were put up for execution in my hometown and you were at the gibbet and you could escape, right? And you could run from the bottom of Gibbet Street, where the guillotine is, to the Running Man pub, which is like, I don't know, 5, maybe 10 miles away, like down the road. Like, if you could make it to that point, you were a free man. It was like on the border of the town, you were a free man.
Oh, I could
And you,
totally make it. I'd be
and they
good
were
at
like,
that.
you couldn't make it, girl. I could not make it. I'm a goner. Oh my God, no, but they used to do it, and the chance they would like if someone got out, they would chase them. There, I guess there are people that made it, but that's also a really haunted pub, because apparently, the spirits of the people whose heads were chopped off, their spirits would try running, and they would make it there. So this
Oh my
pub's
gosh. Edinburgh must be full of like of escaped and sad and like trying to escape people.
yeah, freaking crazy. So moral of the story is my hometown's really messed up, or the history of my hometown is really messed up. There's a lot of really spooky, macabre goings on there. There's a lot of haunted stories. My grandparents actually owned pubs in Halifax and Bradford, which is one of the neighboring towns. And my grandfather used to tell me ghost stories all the time. After school, I'd be like, "Tell me a ghost story." And they had them. So my grandfather and my grandmother owned a pub called the Ringer Bells in Halifax, and it's right next to what is now, I believe, it's not a cathedral. It's a parish church. It was the Halifax Parish Church back then, and there were tunnels underneath. So they would actually bring people into the pub, and if there was people, not my grandparents, because this was like that was like the 70s when they owned it, 60s and 70s, but way back in the day when it was first built, people that were trying to escape, like, prosecution for little things, right? The landlords would bring them in, and there was a tunnel that went from the pub across the road. It's just a cobbled road, but it goes underneath from the beer cellar. It
So
goes under
cool.
church, and they could get under and they could run under and go. And my dad actually has a scar on his leg because when he was a kid, he was playing in those tunnels with his friends, and he took his friends down there, and they were running, and he tripped over, and he like really messed up his leg, and he's got a scar on his knee from it, which is
Oh
really,
my
really
gosh. I love a haunted tunnel. So good.
I never got to go down there, but next time we're in the UK, we're going to go to the UK as well, and
Yeah,
we'll go.
we've got lots of field trips to go on.
Yeah, so many. Anyway, that was my story for the day. Was Clarke Hall and witches and the hauntings of Yorkshire.
Oh, that's absolutely spectacular. I'm gonna be thinking about that all day.
I know. The Clarke Hall one though, like really, like I think about it a lot, and I remember those field trips because obviously we did regular field trips to places, right? But where I'm from, I mean, it's like you were brought up on this little island, right? So
Yeah.
tell people stories of like bears and like
Well,
swimming, like
I
trying
was
to.
just while you were talking, I was also thinking about what field trips we went on, but like we went on trips to watch the salmon spawns. Like we would go to this river where the salmon all swim upstream and spawn, and so you could like see the salmon trying to swim, and like a lot of them don't make it, and then you're looking for the eggs. Like we did not have to dress up like salmon. We just went to the woods and like looked at the
But if
wildlife.
they gave you the opportunity, Erica, you would have dressed up as a
Oh my
salmon.
gosh, I would have dressed up as a witch, 100%.
You've been jumping around like this.
Yeah, like
I see
casting
the
spells on
birds. I
people.
watched a video once of a bear catching salmon. reaching over and just they like just grab them as they jump up, right?
Yeah, there's bears are wild. I mean, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, adorable.
Yeah,
No,
we love
love,
we
love
love a bear.
bears.
Yeah.
We digress.
How did we get to bears? I know how we got to bears, but that's really funny.
Yeah, I know. Great. There we go. Our spooky
Yeah.
podcast turns to just us digressing into cute little animals that we would love to see.
I hope I get to see a bear when I'm home
I know.
from a great distance.
Mm, cool.
Amazing. Well, that's
Yeah.
such a fantastic story, George. And I still think it's super haunted that I could not find any information on this.
I think that's super weird though. And the fact that I get chills a lot, but I feel like I only ever get chills when I'm talking about things I shouldn't necessarily be talking about.
Mm.
When I'm reading
Like,
tarot, like I get chills a lot.
yes. Oh my gosh. I will like send you, I'll do a screen recording of like trying to, I could not find anything in England. It's like
So
Australian Wi-Fi is saying, no, you
was
don't
on
get
like
to know
the
about this.
Yorkshire Heritage site for a lot of this for history on the building. And when it was built by the Clarke family and such, the Witch of Clarke Hall, the legend, oh, it's called the Legend of the Witch of Clarke Hall. Um, oh wait, there's a little bit here I missed off.
Oh,
Many people visiting the site to experience paranormal activities themselves. Some modern day ghost hunters and paranormal enthusiasts still visit Clarke Hall hoping to catch a glimpse of Margaret's restless spirit.
oh my gosh. And we will put all the links to research in the show notes. I won't put any links to mine because it was just scrolling and not seeing anything useful. Definitely make sure you follow us on all of our socials at Macabre and Company. We're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, and our email is macabreandcompany@gmail.com. Do we have a cameo from Parker? I see
Do we
Parker.
have? Are you? Did you see him running over?
Yes,
Little tip tappy feet. There he is.
there he is. Hi, baby.
You're spooking out the camera.
He's so
Say
cute.
hi to our spooky friends.
Hi,
Oh, just
Parker. Oh, we
oh,
love a puppy cameo. Bless his little heart. Did you
no,
think of an outgoing tagline for us? I haven't thought of one yet.
no. And as always, keep spooky. Oh, stay spooky. Let's try
Stay
it again.
spooky,
I'll
stay
say, and as
spooky,
always, and you should say it, stay
stay
spooky.
spooky.
Yeah?
I like it.
Okay,
All
okay,
right,
let's try it. And as always,
stay spooky. I love it so much. I love you so much. Thank you for listening, friends, and give us a like and let us know what you liked about this episode. Let us know what we should do next, and we'll see you next week. I'm representing today one of our delightful and glorious drag kings of Melbourne, Freddie Merkin. This is my
oh,
Freddie shirt.
wow.
Mhm.